Hey, friends. Welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and today we are talking the Netflix original series, Selena. The Netflix original Selena is a series that tells the story of the late Tejano singer, Selena Quintanilla, as she rises to stardom. This 9-part series ends right at the point in her career when she's released her first album. This in-depth look at her early family life and the struggles and sacrifice the family went through. In this week's episode, Christina and I discuss part 1.
Just like I had talked about how important Ginny and Georgia was to me as an adult.
Yeah. So I guess what's also different from my experience and yours is Selena passed away during my lifetime and the movie came out pretty shortly after.
1997.
And I was a child.
Yeah, the movie was released in 97.
So for me, I got to grow up with it and I got to grow up with that experience. And like I said, we do live in this community where I get to grow up surrounded by it. So for me, it was, I guess I felt probably more inclusive than a lot of people, maybe overly, because a lot of people would remind me that I'm white. And I'm like, you're right. But like it was such like a staple. The movie was such a staple in my house. So when the Netflix series came out, I was like, I got so pumped. I was telling Taylor, like when me and Taylor first started dating, one of our like things was he had to watch Selena with me because it's my favorite movie. And so when the like series came out, I had like a countdown going. I was like, babe, we're gonna watch it together. We're gonna do all these things. And he's just like, okay. And like, I've converted him. Now he loves it. And now he's convinced I'm also more Mexican than I am because he just looks at me and he's like, how do you say this? And I'm like, I don't know.
So what I found surprising for me, well, one, I didn't know that much about Selena prior to, because it just wasn't an area that was of interest to me. Not because she wasn't talented, she's very talented. Her most famous song is the closeout song at this pre-pandemic. There was this gay club that we used to go to, and when that song came on, everybody was like, yes, but also that was the last song of the night.
What song was it?
I honestly,
was it a fast or slow song?
It was a faster song. I heard it.
It was Bitty Bitty Bum Bum.
Yeah. And I was like, and I just loved how they like end on such a high note and such a like energy driven, like good night, rather than this like we're all sad that we have to leave the bar now. It's 2 a.m. Go home. You know?
Yeah.
But what I wasn't expecting was the being able to relate when they were just kind of this portrayal of like, there was a scene, if you recall, where Abraham was like, you have to learn Spanish if this is going to work. Like you have to sing in Spanish if this is going to work. And, you know, we have to relate to the, what did they call it? Tejano community, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is my ignorance showing. I need to educate myself. And so there was just this whole thing about like, and you've said this before, there was this whole thing about like she and Selena said multiple times about I'm an American. And I was like,
it really shows the different generations that Abraham grew up in and Selena was or is growing up in, where she's like, no, like we're Mexican Americans, like we're both, we can be both, let's embrace both. And he's like, no, they're only going to see us as Mexicans, so we need to stick to being Mexican, and that's how it is, and that's how you get successful. Because I tried to do the crossover and it didn't work, and it's because he was ahead of his time. Like he was too progressive for his time, which is ironic because then he seems so conservative with his kids
and a little oppressive. Which I understand where he's coming from, because he's very protective.
I also have to say it is a lot of people would say the Hispanic community, like that is how the household is ran, you know, like there is like an abrasive tone to raising. There's the chancla is a thing for a reason. It's funny, but it's a thing for a reason. It's an abrasive culture. Like everything's aggressive, but the love is aggressive. The food's aggressive. Everything's aggressive, but everything comes from like love and passion. And it's just all this overwhelming. Like I always say it, my family's overwhelming, but like it comes from love.
Yeah. There was a really great line he said. I forget which episode it was, which is why my notes are so important. Selena doesn't understand, right? She's young. I think it's when she was like 8, in the portrayal of when she was like 8 or 9.
Yeah, like 8 or 9.
And she says she doesn't understand why this emphasis on being Mexican because she's American. And he says, I'm from Mexico. I'm Mexican, which makes you Mexican. So your roots are in Mexico. And I'm paraphrasing and doing a terrible job of recapping it. I had written it down, literally rewinded and wrote it down word by word, because I think with the way that the rise of the United States of America is, it's so easy to forget our origins. And that just felt so beautiful. Like his speech was just so beautiful. And it was inspiring, clearly, because she learned how to sing in Spanish, and that was huge. Obviously that was a life career changer.
I think what I love too so much about it is that he does accept the American lifestyle, and he does accept the American dream, and he wants to go with like the American way, but he also respects his roots, and he wants to still honor them. And I like that. Like, I kind of like the way that they go about it in the sense of like Selena and Abraham balance each other out. She's so like, celebratory of like the American lifestyle, and he's so supportive of her. And I mean, he gives resistance, but he can see like the passion, and he trusts her more than I would say a lot of dads would trust their teenage daughters. And like he lets her follow like these dreams that are sketchy, and he knows don't always lead the right way, but they do it in this way that like brings in both of their points of views, and they bring them in together. And it's so cool that they got to do that, and they did it as like a father and daughter.
Yeah, he had the experience in the music industry that was necessary to guide a young girl through it, because the music industry is unforgiving and incredibly abusive to young women, and some young men too. It's not isolated, but it is heavily prevalent with young women. So he was able to take that experience, see his daughter's talent, and then help her flourish, which I thought was selfless. And I wondered though, like,
and I would also say, I'm sorry to interrupt, no, but like we mentioned being abrasive earlier, he needed that to stand up for Selena. And so some of that does carry over, like it's natural when you're used to being some way to get your kids the best of life. Sometimes you forget like to take that hat off when you're with your children, But what Abraham always does, and what I would say freaking Selena's mom is so wonderful at, is that she always brings Abraham back to earth, and she's always reminding him that it's about the family. It's about the kids being happy. It's about them following their dreams and doing what they want, not what Abraham wants. So
yeah,
sorry.
he does. No, you're fine. He does have sort of this mentality of that he does know best. And I think that's true of any leader in the family. What was interesting to me too in the early years was how he discovered Selena could sing. He's teaching AB how to play guitar. So, there's that natural transition of I'm talented somewhere musically. I'm going to teach my family. I'm going to bring my family along with me. There's a natural assumption that it's going to be, if you're a male, if you're the father, it's going to be your son. Like that's a thing, right? And so they're sitting at the kitchen table, and then he hears like little Selena singing, and it's like massive pipes for a child, and it totally shifts gears. So that leads us into talking about Abe and Suzette, because
I have so much to say.
Okay, cool. Because we're here for it. Because I feel for AB in the sense of like, he's got a lot of pressure on him. His dad isn't as generous with him as he is with Selena, in the sense of like not creativity, but in the sense of like, it doesn't feel like AB is as supported as Selena is. And I don't know if that's accurate or if that was for dramatic effect, but it made me feel for AB because it was like all this pressure on him to be creative and innovative and do something that can transcend, you know, not just in a Latin album, but also eventually a crossover at some point. That's a lot of pressure.
Also, the fact that like he never gets to enjoy it. Like he literally, the second he is done creating, his dad's like, okay, make more. It's not like, good job. It makes me so sad for him because it's like, you know, he's working so hard to be noticed and he's not getting the notice that he wants, which only makes him work harder because that's what guys do. And he's literally like working himself down, and it's you just like, you can't help. And then I also feel for him in the sense that like, it's gotta suck. I don't know what the dynamic is in a band, but it's always probably like a little bit like sucky for anyone in a band, like compared to the lead singer. But imagine
does anybody
your siblings, like your siblings, and then your parents or your managers, like that's a family dynamic that's got to have some weight to it that like is just complicated to talk about and to really get into,
especially considering that Abraham was pouring his musical hopes and dreams into AB before he heard Selena sing. So to be aware of that transition, how do you let go of that to move on? I mean, he did such a great job of being such a supportive brother, doing what he was supposed to do for the band to be successful. But man, to sit on the sidelines and swallow that every day and pretend to be okay with it, I can't wait for part 2.
I hope, like, because obviously like in the movie you can only get so far. You got like an hour and a half to tell the whole story. And then the Netflix series, I feel like they still rushed it. The season 1 they rushed, I feel like, so much. I don't know how long of a series it's going to be. I don't know like how much they want to tell. I don't know if there's going to be more of like an afterlife or after death.
I think rushing the early years was intentional because they make a very quick reference. I want to say it was in towards the end, maybe episode 7 or 8, where there's that push that somebody needs to manage a fan club for Selena. And that's when we get that quick introduction to Yolanda.
Can I just show you my notes really quick?
Did you find them? Because the whole time I'm watching this,
it says in all capitals for no one who got to see it. Fuck Yolanda. And it's underlined because I mean it.
That such quick short reference in that episode makes
I don't want to meet her.
Well, it makes me think that they might go into more in depth. So having only known the J-Lo Selena and knowing who Selena is because of the J-Lo movie, and then learning a little bit more about Selena slowly over the years, watching this series really intrigued me. Because now I'm like, I know, why does, like they said, oh, Yolanda, blah, 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 and thank you for joining our team. I'm thinking, why does that name sound familiar? So
Yolanda Saldivar, I believe.
Yeah. So I look her up and I'm reading, granted, Wikipedia is, not a source that we were allowed to use when I was in college, but it's great for quick references. And so I'm reading the Wikipedia page and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't register that that's the name of the woman who killed her. And that just, I was like, this is going to be so much bigger in part 2 if they address it in part 2, because that quick demonstration of her kind of being like a fangirl, but sort of also implying that maybe she's not.
So, okay. There's a lot to unpack with her, but I'm gonna wait to go there. What I would say though, like getting back to AB, because we haven't even gotten to Suzette, and I really want to talk about Suzette because poor Suzette is a middle child, and we just pulled a middle child syndrome on her by forgetting her and leaving her out of the conversation after introducing her.
Yeah.
I love her. I love that she went with the drums, even though she didn't want to. Yeah. I love that she supports her sister so much. She is her biggest fan, and it doesn't ever seem like she's jealous. At least from what we can see, but that's what I'm actually curious about. And what I would love for them to do in part 2 is show us more of AB's life, show us more of Suzette's life, show us these people and show us how they felt during all this time. Because if I'm not mistaken, Suzette's one of the producers on the show, right? Like this is all.
I didn't look that deeply, and I
So
think I will.
I believe I need to look again, but I believe that she is one of the producers, and the reason that like the series is supposed to be better is because they're supposed to get more of like an in-depth,
firsthand family
yeah,
consulting.
But I also just found out that Abraham announced, because I follow the Selena page on Facebook still, even though I barely go on Facebook, that Abraham is going to write a book. And I can't wait for him to do that. And I hope that there's an audiobook, and I hope he reads it, and I hope I get to listen to it. But if not, I will read the book. Like, of course. I think it would be awesome to hear. I would love to hear more of the family's point of view, because I think that there's way more of a family dynamic here. We focus so much, of course, on Selena because she's, the one who we're all grieving. But I think that it's important to focus on the people that are still living and what it did to them before and what it does to them after,
I really did love they were getting a little bit bigger. There was a scene in one of the later episodes where this gal is just so excited that they're coming to town. You see this fan scenario. You're assuming she's excited about Selena. And then at the end, when she comes up to the bus and talks to Suzette, and Suzette's like, oh, Selena, I don't remember if she said she's done signing autographs or she'll be out in a minute or she's in the bus, I can get her. And the fangirl's like, no, it's you I want the autograph of. It's you I wanted to meet. And she's just like, oh my gosh, really?
I love it.
That was such a sweet moment. And it really made me happy because Suzette is such a great big sister. She is loving. She is supportive. She is encouraging. She reassures Selena when people try to make her feel bad about who she is and how she wants to be represented. And she just really is in her corner. And I love that about her, so much so that when we met Bill, oh my God, the actor's so hot. How could you not remember this?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were saying me and you met someone named Bill. I'm like, who's Bill?
Not us. I don't know anybody named Bill. I really love their meet cute. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's accurate. But in the series, their meet cute is so adorable because one of the bandmates has to go do something and Bill's at his sister's house or somebody's house watching the kids because something's happened and blah, blah. And then they walk in and she's just like, and he's that dumbfounded, like, oh, you're pretty. And something in my heart jumped and he has the same look on his face.
I know.
And I'm just like, get it, girl. You need love. And not because like people need love, but because I can only imagine what it's like being an only child and feeling like you're always passed over in that way.
Yeah. I'm curious because you did point out that the focus for music was on AB and then to Selena. Like, was there ever a time where it was on Suzette, or did it just go from AB to Selena? And if so, how did that make Suzette feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Because they do sort of imply in the series too that Suzette's not really that talented. Abe even says in another episode that she can't really keep up with the beat that they need, and sort of starts, kind of gives these implications that she's not at the level that he and Selena are. But he never ever says anything to her face. He only ever says it to Abraham.
I think too, I think the family band started so young. So part of it was her siblings were in it, so she probably wanted to be in it, and then but her passion isn't there. That's why it's so interesting to see how big of a like fan she is to her own siblings, like especially Selena, and I love that she constantly pushed her to do anything, not just music, where she's like, oh, you like fashion, do that.
Oh, I loved that. I loved how she was so encouraging.
She was so encouraging. If it's like she's like, you like a boy, like, okay, like she was just such a good big sister, which
she wasn't really super keen on her liking boys.
No, but I mean, like, in the sense that like she was a lot more easygoing than I would say most sister dynamics.
Yeah.
And she was more protective in a reasonable way instead of a like just being a big sister like snot.
There was a point in the show that really affected me in a way that just I feel is universal that I'd like to touch on, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you. When the
I know
restaurant,
what it is.
do you?
No.
Okay. So there's a point where their restaurant is just really struggling and they apply for what was known back then as food stamps. It is now known as the SNAP program, and it's the government assistance to purchase food. And they're standing in line and this woman says, "Oh, I know you. You're that little girl that sings at, whatever the name of the restaurant is. I can't remember. It was written down."
Papagayos.
And Abraham just feels embarrassment and shame and like they shouldn't be there and like they don't just not that they don't deserve the assistance, but there's just this overwhelming sense of like, I've failed when you go and ask for government assistance. I have been in that position multiple times in my adulthood, in my parenthood. There's this stereotype that we think of when people need government assistance. We think of them as being super poor, kind of dirty, all the villainizations that are associated with poverty, right? Like,
yeah.
So here's this well-dressed, well-groomed man and his family, and they need help. So immediately people, he's thinking people probably assume that we don't need the help or we shouldn't get the help or we don't deserve the help or whatever the mental mind fuck is behind that. And I felt like anybody who's ever been in that position, regardless of background, in terms of racial background and cultural background, that is a universal feeling if you've been there.
Yeah.
Like that transcends so many barriers, that socioeconomic hurdle.
Experience.
What I found interesting when the band gets a record deal with EMI, how there was this push from Abraham, and I respect it, to also have the option to do a record in English, and how they kept getting promised, oh yeah, it'll happen. She releases this record, she does a music video, it's, a big hit, yada, yada, yada. And then Abraham's like, okay, now let's talk about the English record. And they're like, no, we need another one in Spanish. He feels betrayed. And I feel like that's such, at least portrayed in pop culture. I don't know if it's true because I've never tried to pursue a music career because at best I'm a backup singer. But Abraham looks so betrayed, and that's such a common thing we see in these music
deals,
in these music biopics, or even like fictionalized music stories.
But I would say, I would just say music in general, because I mean, if you watch Queen's story, they got crapped on the whole time too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we see this portrayed so that it's villain, that's showing that the music industry has a very specific purpose for you. And even though you have a unique sound, they're still going to figure out how your sound fits within their brand, and which ultimately changes your sound, right? Like, it was very important for Selena to do an album in English, but nobody at the record label cared. They wanted her only for the Latin community.
And on top of that, Abraham is also recognizing the fact that like Selena had wanted to do, focus being on Mexican American, which is making that English album. And that's what he's pushing for. And now he's put in this box that he was trapped in himself, which is, no, you only are Mexican. You only speak Spanish, like you only do this kind of music. And it's like, don't put me in this box when you told us that we were going to diversify and make ourselves like be able to like literally bring the two cultures together, and now you want to make them two separate things, which is what we're literally against. That's not the point. Like, the point is to be like, I learned my dad's culture to keep that alive, and he's learning ours to keep growing, and we're bringing these two together, and instead we're continually putting these people in boxes. And I would say that's a common thing in the mixed experience, is putting people into boxes instead of just letting people celebrate all of what they are.
That's pretty typical, where it's like, you don't get to decide what you are, we decide what you are. And that's very resonant in the mixed community, because there's so much othering and misidentifying that happens in the mixed community, whether it's, oh, you look like a light-skinned Black woman, so I think that you're monoracial, or you present as white, or whatever it is. Like, after we had a conversation about our mixed experiences, a couple episodes ago, I had another conversation with a friend of mine who's half Mexican, and she was like, my name's hella white. I look
Same.
white. Yeah, she's like, I look white. So here's something that's gonna blow your mind.
Oh, I'm ready.
You
Is
ready?
it like decaf coffee again? Because that messed with me.
For days it messed with you. Selena would be 50 this year if she were still with us.
That messed me up a lot. It messed me up because it also realized that one, I think I'm her age that she passed away at. Two,
No, she was 23. It was a month before her 24th birthday. I did Google that.
Okay, thanks. I read somewhere very infactual things, which is funny because I remember her being I remember it being her like young 20s, and then I read something where it said 27, and I was like, that seems wrong, but all right.
There is a category of musicians who have died at 27. The ones that come to the forefront of my mind are Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse. So there is sort of this weird thing about being a musician and 27 and sort of dying in some interesting sort of way. Like Amy Winehouse was a drug overdose, Kurt Cobain was a gunshot wound, Jimi Hendrix, I believe, was also a drug overdose, and same with Janis Joplin.
And weren't like a bunch of them suicide?
Well, technically, Kurt Cobain's death was ruled, death by suicide. I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact, Janis Joplin's was a drug overdose. I feel like Jimi Hendrix was too. I think maybe it involved heroin. I'd have to double check. In the 90s, I spent way too much time obsessed with the 60s and 70s era. And I think it's because that's when my parents were in like their heyday. We've talked about my parents before, but they married in 1971 and they dated for a handful of years before then. Around 12, I became very obsessed with the pop culture. This is probably where my obsession with pop culture comes from. I became very obsessed with like pop culture and the counterculture because we grew up listening to all that music, but also because like I knew at a very early age that interracial marriages were not legal until 1968 on a federal level. Like that's a random weird thing for an 8-year-old to know, but I knew.
That's not a weird thing for an 8-year-old to know. I feel like we should all know that, but
the amount of people who don't know that still to this day is really upsetting. But so I just threw myself into the era that was my parents' youth to get a better.
Okay. To like a note
I needed to know. I needed to know why it was okay that I existed. I needed to know why my dad loved listening to the Beach Boys, but also Motown. Like I just threw myself in.
What's weird is I also got like when I was in high school, I got very fascinated to what my parents listened to in high school. I remember going to a water polo tournament. It was Junior Olympics, and I had my iPod. I had a playlist on there of my mom's and dad's songs.
Didn't exist when I was in high school.
It was the ones that weren't phones. It was an actual iPod.
It doesn't matter, Christina. We had Discmen. Try running track. I didn't run track.
It was my
but try
year.
like roller skating with a Discman.
I was an 18-year-old basically. I was almost an adult. No, I was 17, but still, like I wasn't like I was young when it was out, It was like my older teen.
Listen, here's our age gap. When I was a senior in high school, my parents were like, oh, you got some A's. We're going to give you a cell phone. And that was fucking huge because nobody, except for the rich kids, had cell phones in school. They were not as common as they are now. Even 17 years ago when I had my child, we still had like a version of that Nokia phone that everyone's like, oh, this is weird. It's so archaic. I'm like, that's like, we had to press it 3 times to get to the letter J if we wanted to text.
Well, yeah, I remember those phones.
I
had
the
those
microphone
too. I was in middle school when like the Nokia, like the snake version, the phone that you could run over with a car and it just wouldn't die. Like it was just a brick.
Like cell phones were still an item that you could confiscate when I was in campus security and teachers like, oh, you have a cell phone?
They could do that.
It's locked in my drawer. Your parent needs to come get it. Now.
Yeah, no, we weren't allowed to have them at school. Like it was the often put away rule was like strict. I mean, it's strict in the sense of like they could confiscate your phone and no one was causing a tizzy about anyone taking someone's phone. Your parent was like, yeah, well, you shouldn't have had it on you in class. I told you to.
Now these kids are like using
Yeah,
cell
now
phones
it's
all the
like
time. And
it's
parents are so
ridiculous.
irate when they are taken away because they're like $1,000
They're
fucking dollars now.
$1,000.
Like
You
when my
shouldn't be
first
giving
cell
us.
phone literally was $60.
Yeah, well, don't give a 7-year-old $1,000 iPhone.
Oh man. Anyway, we digress. Okay, go ahead. What
I
were
don't
we
remember
talking
what we were
about?
talking. Oh, we were talking. We got
Being
so
50 this year?
Yeah, we got so digressed. Yeah, that's weird. It was weird to think about the fact that she was a couple years younger than my parents. I don't know. I guess like it's so weird how your brain doesn't like age people.
Yeah. Well, and I can't imagine, especially when somebody dies young, that's forever how they stay.
Yeah.
And I was watching, as part 1 ended, I was thinking, man, she had so much talent in so many different ways.
I know. Oh, okay. I had something on that. Hold on.
Okay. Far away.
So I wonder where Selena's like true passion actually lied, because she
Mhm.
was so young and so like multi-talented that it was hard to say that singing was going to be her biggest like success.
Mhm.
We don't know. Like she got so into fashion and she was so good at everything that she did and took on, and she seemed
Yeah.
so excited to like start her farm and her family.
I
And it's like,
know.
who knows, she might have just like stopped after like 1 or 2 more albums and then raised a family. Like there's so many things that she could have done.
And she
I'm
really
like,
did. Sorry, go ahead.
she could have come out with a makeup line, because she always, like I know that they did end up coming out with like a lipstick line under her name, and I would love to get one of those. I have yet to do that, but like I wonder, like I feel like she'd be someone who would get into that at some point, or like skincare, or like who knows what. But
she did
she
have a
would
really
be
good
like
eye for fashion. I mean,
yeah,
at least that's how they
she
portrayed
would
it in the show.
definitely. But she made all of their
Or
costumes.
costumes. Yeah. I
So
love her
it's like,
statement when
yeah.
she made the statement about like someone's like cow print, and she's basically the equivalent of like, trust me, bitch, it's gonna work. And it
Yeah.
totally did.
Everything worked. Oh my goodness. There's the purple like jumpsuit outfit that she wears at like a certain show, like the Houston, Texas show. I want to be that for Halloween every year. And every year I'm like, I can't do that. I can't pull that off. Like only Selena can pull that off. But it's like every year it's my hope and dreams to have like a good enough body to do that. And I'm like, no, it's not the year. And then I'm like, I'm getting older. It's never gonna happen if I don't do it now.
Now or never.
Yeah.
So when they brought Chris into the show, Chris Perez, I was like, why does this feel familiar? Like, because, again, a cursory knowledge of Selena's life. I don't know. I don't have the same knowledge base.
Yes.
So again, clicking into Wikipedia, I was like, oh, Chris Perez is her husband. Ooh. So I just thought the unfolding of the relationship was really sweet. They had all these really sweet moments. You can tell he genuinely loves her, at least based on the show. Again, I'm basing it on the show. I don't know the history there. I don't know the aftermath, the immediate aftermath of her death and the devastation that caused. I would only know the historical references as I embark on that, learning about that more. But in the show,
I know that he still promotes her legacy. He still loves her so much. Yeah. I don't follow him closely at all. I mean, but every once in a while, like I'm just nosy and I'm like, what's Chris up to? And then I look and I'm like, I love that he still is like, Selena would have been this year. Like her, don't, like, let's not lose her love and light. And he just like, he's constantly still showing love towards the family too. Like he still like gets together with old bandmates and like does not reunions, but like they play together and like jam out, because he'll post it. I went on a deep dive, like I don't know, I want to say like a year ago or something, probably when all the Selena stuff came back out, and I just got on social media and went down. But I was like, that makes me both happy and sad. It's like a bittersweet, you know?
So then the representation of their love on the show is pretty accurate, because those actors did such a good job at showing that they were in love with each other.
The wigs, Julia. What were those?
First of all, I have a hard time with fake hair anyway in general.
Same,
like whenever
I
anybody's got a bad wig on, I'm always just like, what is this mess? We live in the 21st century. I know for a fact there's better fake hair out there.
I have seen just girls in my college classes have better fake hair attached to them than this is a like Netflix series.
Yeah, I would assume that Netflix could afford the actual anyway. Yeah. But also the
but
also
mad.
The hair.
What is there bad?
But also the hair in the 90s wasn't that great. I was looking through old pictures at my mom's house the other day, and I'm gonna tell you, it was not good. The hair from the 90s is not
I'm definitely not arguing.
But also like the vintage Targets, like the Target scenes gave me life because I was like, that's the Target of my childhood.
I wonder what it was like to set up a vintage
Target to this day and get cranky because like shit doesn't look the same or isn't in the same spot it was in 30 years ago. Like, come on, Julia.
Like no. They've redone it multiple times at this point and you're still mad.
And so like the tapes are supposed to be right here. And then the kid's like, I don't know what a tape is, ma'am. I'm like, fuck, I got ma'amed. Like, damn it.
I don't know what a tape. He's all, would you like a Blu-ray? And you're like,
would you like a Blu-ray? Like the combo pack's on sale.
There's a DVD with it. Is that what you want?
Do you need it? Do you need a DVD? That seems like
the DVD players are on sale for $20 if you want one.
Ma'am, you're scaring me. This is the way the Target's been.
They're all like remote. There's a woman here who's asking for, what did you call it?
A cassette tape?
Something called a cassette? I don't even know. Sounds fake.
What is that?
Is this for a YouTube video? I don't know. He don't know what cassettes are either.
Oh man. I still have cassette tapes from high school. And my mixed CDs.
I remember I had a Boys to Men cassette tape.
Oh, Boys to Men, ABC, BBD.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. BBC, ABD. I have now the CD in my car.
Nice.
I have a 2009 and I'm not upgrading that.
No. You always knew that a boy liked you if he made you a mixtape or a mixed CD.
So you're saying I've never been liked.
I wonder what the equivalent is now. Like, are you sending me like a Spotify link to a playlist?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not very romantic.
I don't know. Cole sends us a playlist in the family group chat, and it's nice because then it's like I don't have to look up songs. You sent me a whole playlist.
There's something very romantic about somebody taking the time and effort to organize a play. Well, I guess
there's something so nice about someone sitting on LimeWire for 8 hours to illegally download music.
Can we not talk about the early 2000s? You have no idea how traumatizing they can be. Firstly, let's lead with, what do we want to see in season 2, which drops on Netflix on May 4th?
Better wigs. I want more Suzette. I want more AB. I want to know what they're like. I want to know how they're feeling. I want to know like what they're like outside of, Selena and the band. Mm-hmm. I want to get to know Selena's mom, man. We don't know anything really about her. Yeah. I honestly am getting so angry that I can't think of her name. And now that I can't think of it, it's like purposefully not going to come to me. But that's my point exactly. I don't know. I didn't know enough about her in the movie for me to remember. But Abraham's name is said all the time.
Yeah. Well, he's such a prominent figure in her career.
Yeah.
Marcella.
Oh my God.
In season 2, I would like to see more of Suzette and Bill, and not just because Bill's beautiful. Firstly, we didn't even talk about it. How does Netflix find all these hot men to be in their shows?
They hire mixed people.
I mean, I don't know if any of these actors besides the ones that I'm just saying there was 4 guys on the Selena series where I'm just
because they don't hire the
oh my
same
God,
7 people that all of Hollywood hires. They genuinely go out and find different actors that will fit different roles.
Yeah.
And they'll find them that fit better because it's we need more people that fit all these roles. You can't just keep putting one person in 17 different roles.
They do that because there's a couple of people, there's a couple of series like the guy who's in Russian Doll. He's in a bunch of Netflix stuff. He's in 4 or 5 different Netflix shows.
In general, Netflix is better about handpicking actors and finding new actors to put into things though than I don't know, at least mainstream Hollywood.
Yeah. And I'm just over here like, okay, so I've seen like 20 Netflix series in the last 5 months, and now there's like 70 more beautiful men in my life, because they just can't seem to not hire like really attractive men. And I'm okay with that. I'm here for it.
I mean,
Like,
we can
good job, Netflix. Way to go.
Well, I want more representation for ugly people.
If somebody is a talented actor or actress, it really shouldn't matter what they look like.
Exactly.
Case in point,
That's
Jack
what
Nicholson.
I'm saying. So let me be an actress.
Oh my
Jack
God,
Nicholson.
you're beautiful.
Did you remember? Okay, can I send you this? Perfect. You said Jack Nicholson. I have the perfect picture to send you, and you will laugh your butt off, because I found out very uncomfortably one summer when a friend took my picture in the pool that me and Jack Nicholson have the same smile when we're laughing too intensely, and it's terrifying. And I will send you the picture that she took of me. It looks like me, okay? It looks like me. And then I'll show you the picture I put next to it, and you're gonna want to put it up when we post this podcast, because it's hilarious.
As part of the teaser,
it made me laugh.
Christina
so
looks like Jack
hard.
Nicholson.
I posted it on my own Instagram stories, and I said I am cry laughing at this discovery about myself.
We'll do a poll, because I feel like you think that you look like Jack Nicholson, but maybe you don't actually look like him, and you just look like a beautiful person laughing.
I don't think so. If so, then Jack Nicholson is also a beautiful person laughing, because
maybe he was a bad example. There are some actors out there I'm just like, you're a normal looking human, and I appreciate that you exist as an actor, because you're actually really talented. I will say
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, he's just like a basic looking dude.
He's just basic. I mean, he's not bad looking. He's just basic looking. He looks like a person.
He just
looks like a person, but he's so talented, which means he brings a lot to the table.
Yeah, I told my son, I said, we need to go through Philip Seymour Hoffman's catalog, because he's so talented, and his acting brevity, I guess, or whatever, his resume is just so expansive that you forget that it's the same actor in all of these different movies. Because he can embody that character. That's such Meryl Streep's like that too. Denzel does a great job.
Yes,
I mean, we could have a whole conversation
about Freeman.
Oh, I love Morgan Freeman.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of Morgan Freeman, I heard a podcast this morning. It was a guy that did voices, and they're talking about their traumas, and he does a great Morgan Freeman voice. And so anytime he didn't want to cry, he would just tell his story in Morgan Freeman's voice. And it made all of us laugh so hard. Like him on the podcast and me in my room getting ready.
Yeah, but I love that. So I'm excited for season 2. I think I need to do an education more so about the Mexican American experience, because that's, like I said before, it's not really something I'm very aware of outside of the peripheral that I know.
I also just need to look up more actual factual things about Selena's family and life, and before we get to season 2,
Yeah, I did learn a lot about Selena from the show. I did too. I did watch the JLo movie from 1997, but I think it's been maybe 20 years since I've seen it. And I really did relate and identify with the narrative of the musician. I have dated a musician in my life, several, who had sort of these big dreams that never really like went anywhere. And that AB struggle of like home life and being successful, like I kind of felt his wife was so supportive. So I'd like to see, does she continue to be supportive as they get bigger? Like that would be an interesting area to explore in season 2.
Yeah.
And that's our show for y'all. This conversation with Christina was so much fun. If you want to join the conversation with us, find us on Instagram at Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. Tune in next week when we talk about Mixed Dish.